We're talking about you. We're talking about your Turner syndrome. What do you think of that?
Good.
Yeah? Do you know that you have Turner syndrome?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? What does it mean that you have Turner syndrome?
I don't know.
I know you don't know.
Turner syndrome is a term given to phenotypic females, that's people who are female, that have an abnormality or missing the short arm of the X chromosome. And because of that, there's associated problems such as short stature, cardiac abnormalities, learning differences, renal abnormalities, a host of other issues that go with missing the genes on the short arm of the X chromosome.
I explained to one person that, and somebody else walked up and said, this is Susie. She's got that new disease.
So Turner is Dr. Henry Turner. He was the first person that we credit having described the set of features that we now call Turner syndrome. Approximately 1 in 2,000 women has Turner syndrome. However, with that being said, approximately 99% of fetuses who have Turner syndrome are actually miscarried.
Turner's girls is actually a phrase that my friends like to use because it makes it feel as if we're a family and that it shows how close we are. Because I could be like, oh, my Turner's girls are here, or I got my Turner's girls here. It's the little things that subconsciously help them feel like they're not alone and that they have a family and that they have someone to lean on. And I think that just saying the Turner syndrome community doesn't really shed the light on how close that every single girl at that conference is.
A lot of them also refer to their children or each other as butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very common to hear a parent say, my butterfly, or to hear a young woman to say, as a butterfly.
A butterfly is a perfect representation of Turner's girls because the process in which every girl goes through in their lifetime from being diagnosed. Being diagnosed, you feel like a caterpillar. You don't feel as large and as beautiful and as incredible as every girl should feel. And so I think that once you go through the change and the process and you come out a beautiful butterfly is the representation of the acceptance and the self-confidence that every girl needs. And going through having Turner syndrome makes this process so much harder, but you come out so much more beautiful at the end. You come out so much stronger, and it's something that saying butterfly is just a perfect representation of each girl's life story.
Depends what kind of acid. Look! Can I
I have been involved with the Turner Syndrome Society of the United States since the organization started. We had our first conference in 1988 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The story about the starting of the organization is that when we were at this conference in Canada, several of the women were there from the U.S., and they wrote down on a napkin, "We will start a Turner Syndrome Society of the United States." Generally, we have our conferences all over the country. We try to alternate between East Coast, Central, and West Coast, and it's almost always that middle weekend in July.
The stories that the older women tell are just horrifying.
When I was born, they didn't know anything. They had just identified Turner syndrome. So Mom and Daddy didn't know what to do. Fortunately, we had a friend that was a surgeon that knew people at Johns Hopkins. And at 15 months, I was evaluated at Johns Hopkins, and they said I was identified at 15 months, or a year and a half. And they said I would never
to physically or mentally above 12 years old, and to put me in an institution. Mother and Daddy wrestled with that, and my grandmother said, "Over my dead body."
At that time, they knew very, very little about Turner syndrome, but they did know when I was born I had these puffy hands and feet, and they thought, well, yeah, maybe. So they told my mom, take her home and love her and bring her back when she's about 6 and we'll see if we can diagnose her. So she did, and yes, I do have Turner syndrome. They never told me this. I just knew I was half the size of everybody else my age. And very well-meaning adults would all tell me, "Don't worry, you'll grow." Well, maybe not so much.
I was diagnosed with Turner syndrome, I think when I was about 15, 16, in between the summer of my sophomore and junior year of high school. I remember kind of growing up, my mom had always said to the pediatricians, something's not quite right, she's not developing, and the pediatricians just kind of pushed her aside saying, "Oh, you're a worry wart mother, she's a late bloomer, she's fine." Until finally it got to the point where the pediatrician was like, "Well, I better send her to a pediatric endocrinologist."
By the time I was 15, I went back to the endocrinologist, and he called a few days later, and I happened to answer the phone, and he wanted to speak to my mom as usual. He never spoke to me. He would ask me if I had any questions, but he would never speak directly to me. If I had questions, that was okay, but how am I supposed to have questions if they don't give me any information? Anyway, so he called, and my mom, to talk to my mother, and of course, like any other teenager, I listened on the other phone, and that's how I found out. That's the first time I ever heard the words Turner syndrome.
I remember walking into the office and seeing the pediatric endocrinologist the first time, and he looked at me and kind of just tore me apart and said, "You have Turner syndrome." He was looking at my neck, my fingernails, and some of the other major characteristics of Turner syndrome, and said, "You have this." But I went through the karyotype testing where they drew blood and had it analyzed, and it revealed that I did have Turner syndrome. And I remember once we got the results back, my mother and father and I went and met with the pediatrician, and that's when he kind of went over everything about Turner syndrome and what it meant. I remember he just looked exclusively at my father. He kind of totally ignored my mother and I. Made me feel like I would never amount to anything. He said I was going to be pretty much stupid and not really lead a quality, meaningful life. So it was pretty devastating.
When I diagnose someone with Turner syndrome, it's difficult because there are so many issues that can be associated with Turner syndrome. Of course, most individuals only have a handful of these issues, but they're at increased risk for many. So getting a diagnosis of Turner syndrome and trying to wrap your head around all the organ systems that can be involved can be overwhelming to families.
Other foot. There you go. Now, are you really going to go outside, or are you going to come back in here? You want to stay in? Okay. Let's just leave the shoes on, just in case. Are you going to stay in, or are you going to go out? Okay.
Actually, I'm going to draw a fishy.
You're going to draw a fishy?
Uh-huh.
All right, let's see a fishy. Is that your fishy, Claire?
Yeah.
I like it. The genetic counselor called me with the results of the amniocentesis. She said, your daughter has two syndromes. One is Turner syndrome and one is XXX. And she might be short. And I thought that doesn't seem terrible. And she could have cognitive difficulties. And I said, give me more about that. She could have trouble with math, or she won't be able to care for herself as an adult. Where are we on that spectrum? And she couldn't really give me any information. But she did end the phone call by saying, you have 2 weeks to decide whether or not you want to keep this pregnancy.
The saddest cases that I've dealt with in Turner syndrome have to do with abortion. Most fetuses that are tested for Turner syndrome are aborted. And in girls who say, especially those with mosaicism, you may have one cell missing an X, another cell having two X's. The phenotypic variability is huge. So you might even have a girl who wouldn't have been diagnosed at all unless prenatal testing had been done. So you kind of run the spectrum from girls that would have had many problems or to girls who would have essentially none. And the parents are so distraught when they meet other girls with Turner syndrome. And they've lost out on this child of theirs. So whether or not one chooses to go ahead with a pregnancy or not, of course, should be entirely up to the family and their discussions with genetic counselors, occasionally with pediatric endocrinologists like me. But you want to make it an informed decision. And a lot of times families really weren't informed. Just because you have Turner syndrome and have some of the problems associated with it doesn't mean that you don't live a very happy, successful life.
I had one doctor write back to me that same day, and he said, I'd be happy to meet with you on Monday. That was Dr. Bakalya. I also heard back from Marcia Davenport, and it turns out that Dr. Bakalya studied with Dr. Davenport. And both of them basically said what I really needed to hear from the genetic counselor, which was, first of all, it's not two separate syndromes. Your daughter has Turner mosaic. Some of her cells have only one X chromosome. The rest of her cells have three X chromosomes. She has no normal cells at all. But they also said every single condition or symptom or effect of Turner syndrome is manageable with current treatments and therapies. So yes, when you read this very long list of things that can go wrong, it can seem overwhelming and scary. Almost never does all of that occur within the same individual. And for what does occur, almost certainly it's going to be manageable in one way or another. So on Friday night, my husband and I were terrified and had no information based on what we got from this genetic counselor. By Monday afternoon, we felt very confident that whatever this little girl was going to experience, she was going to be able to have a very happy and very full and very satisfying life. She has every shot, and we knew then she had every shot. She had the same shot as any other little girl, and there was really nothing to worry about.
I see a ball.
Mm-hmm. Do you see the blue string on the ball?
Yeah. Hey, how does this turn?
Just like this. You can move it like that. You just move it with your finger.
Well, our story started when Jenna was 2.5 years old, and she was referred to UNC Chapel Hill Hospitals for genetic testing, basically for failure to thrive because she was so small. And in the results from the test, we found that she was diagnosed with Turner syndrome.
So there are 3 typical presentations for Turner syndrome. Girls will present either in the newborn period, as a child, or as an adolescent. In the newborn period, when Turner syndrome presents, it's because the physicians in the newborn nursery will notice puffy hands and puffy feet, and then on further investigation will recognize that a child with Turner syndrome may have coarctation of the aorta, which is a condition where the aorta did not develop appropriately. It's a congenital heart defect.
The initial diagnosis was very devastating. I remember for the first 2 weeks just being totally out of sorts as to what this was, what this meant, where we were going. And the first year to year and a half was very time-consuming, going to doctors and really figuring out what part of Turner syndrome affected Jenna and what we needed to do in order to get through that part.
The reaction of families to a diagnosis of Turner syndrome is very broad and differs considerably from family to family. But in general, I find that most families are relieved by a diagnosis because previously they'd known that their child wasn't growing very well, or she had the cardiac issue. She may have had hearing problems, which are a major problem in this population. She might have had an underactive thyroid gland. She might have been hypothyroid. So she might have had a variety of problems. And this one diagnosis explains them all. You finally know kind of what to expect, and to put all the counseling and all can be put in a framework that the family can understand.
Didn't really know what was going on. I just knew I was in and out of hospitals a lot, knew that I had a lot of blood drawn, a lot of needles. Scary time for any kid. But as I grew older, I started asking more questions about why did I have to take shots every night? Why did I have to take all this medicine? Because none of my friends did. In the meantime, I was doing my own shots. By the time I was 6, I was doing this stuff on my own because it was just a daily process for me. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. And it didn't really start to kick in until I was older, and the Turner syndrome started having a bigger impact on social skills, on relationships, as far as just like the telling people. As a kid, no one really cares if you have Turner syndrome. But as you grow older, it becomes more of a social thing.
Turner syndrome can also lead to short stature, which is one of the main manifestations for Turner syndrome.
In looking at the height of women and girls with Turner syndrome, I believe the average height is about 4'9". So I'm personally about 5'2", 5'2.5", so I am a little bit on the taller side.
When I first started out, growth hormone wasn't approved for Turner syndrome. And it really wasn't until 10 years ago that there was a randomized controlled trial showing the efficacy of growth hormone in promoting increasing final adult stature.
I never really had a chance at growth hormone at all. As far as hormone replacement, the estrogen and progesterone, they figured Well, maybe if we start her early on that, it might give her a little bit of a growth spurt, and she'll get her period at the same age as all her friends, and that'll help her feel like everybody else. No.
A long time ago, we often delayed estrogen therapy because estrogen matures the bone, which gave the individuals with Turner syndrome less growing time. What we've come to learn is that the amount of estrogen is key. If you give ultra low doses of estrogen, you can actually even enhance growth a tiny bit.
I'm Jennifer Law. I am a physician at the University of North Carolina in the Pediatric Endocrinology Division. I'm currently the medical director of the University of North Carolina Turner Syndrome Clinic. At UNC Turner Syndrome Clinic, we will follow girls from birth through early adulthood, and we will also meet with mothers who have found out that they are pregnant with a child with Turner syndrome.
We were fortunate because there is a clinic here, and so a lot of our specialists were familiar, but we also had doctors who we had to educate about Turner syndrome in order to be able to get the right services.
I think we learn about Turner syndrome in medical school, and we even have to learn more about it during our general pediatric residency. But when it comes time for actual practice, we don't see it very often. While 1 in 2,000 girls isn't terribly uncommon, if there are mild phenotypes, if there's mild presentations of Turner syndrome, it might get missed if it's not the typical coarctation, puffy hands and feet. These are things that we learn about for our boards, but it's not something that you have to see, for a girl with Turner syndrome. Many of them don't have these features, and so it gets missed.
Probably our biggest struggle was not with the medical care, but with the psychosocial care. Because when she was first diagnosed, there wasn't a lot of information out there, and there currently isn't. We didn't realize until she was about 7 that she was diagnosed with nonverbal learning disorder, which is very common in girls and women with Turner syndrome. And so, fortunately for us, the medical issues weren't huge. But dealing with the nonverbal issues, the social issues, learning disabilities in school, and being able to get support for those became a big work in progress for us.
They do have some differences in learning that pretty much correlate with a nonverbal learning disability, which means that they have some problems with visualizing things in space.
Such as learning to drive. I know that was a real struggle for me to learn to drive, but I learned, and I've been driving for 45 years.
A direction sense, mathematics, as well as some differences in planning.
The way I understand it, it has to do with organizational skills. And for me personally, I don't find myself especially disorganized, but I find myself completely unable to multitask like some people can. For example, just the idea of texting while driving, it's like, I don't even know how that's humanly possible.
I've seen patients who, during the exam, have difficulty turning clothing inside out to put it back on. And these are older adolescent girls who can't navigate through getting their clothes on because of difficulties with spatial orientation. It can be a real problem just with daily function, but then we have had fellows trained at UNC, physicians who have Turner syndrome. Turner syndrome does not have to define a child. It's really every individual has difficulties in life, and with Turner syndrome we're able to define what difficulties that child may actually experience, whereas everyone else is pretty unpredictable.
My name is Megan Edwards. I'm an assistant professor in the occupational therapy department at Winston-Salem State University. I teach quite a few classes to the graduate students. Occupational therapy is a graduate program. I am the Student OT Association advisor, and I also am part of many different committees, including like the Virtual Hospital Simulation Committee.
There are Turner women in our group with every imaginable profession. We have a judge, we have doctors, lots of nurses. A lot of Turner women tend to go into the healthcare field. A lot of them go into teaching. Myself, I'm computer programmer, systems analyst, software developer, whatever they call us these days. We run the gamut.
Went through school, went through high school, and I had trouble with algebra. I dropped it, and then unfortunately I got a good teacher. And then I went off to college thinking I wanted to be a first grade teacher. And when I could not find a student teaching position. I taught 1 year as a teacher, and that was not for me. Well, I came back and worked as a clerk typist at Duke for 2 years. My mother happened to have a friend in counseling department, and I went over and I said, I got a degree I can't use. It took too much out of me. It's just, and trying to keep control of a class. Well, I said, do I qualify? Can you help me? Put me with a psychologist that I made sure I called him and thanked him. He gave me intelligence tests and interest tests and said, well, what's it going to be, librarian or insurance? I said, I'll take librarian. Well, I applied at Appalachian State University. I wasn't going to give this much detail, but the dean there, you see, I had so many people helping me, BR with money. And then Appalachian State, the dean of library science said, you don't need to work with children, you need to work with adults. And I got fortunate to get into the community college program. And I had a job before I finished school. I worked as a community college librarian for 33 years.
I try to encourage families to reach out to their local Turner Syndrome Society, support groups and foundations, both locally and nationally. That way that they can connect with the broader Turner Syndrome community. And when they do that, then they are able to see how girls grow up with Turner Syndrome. And I think that normalizes things for families so that they can see that Turner Syndrome doesn't have to be a devastating diagnosis, that these girls grow up to be beautiful, successful, very bright, fun, and engaging girls who shouldn't be labeled with a syndrome type diagnosis. Turner syndrome should not be a label for these girls. It doesn't define these girls, that these girls should be approached as individuals with a lot of potential.
North Carolina is really the only one that does a big all-day regional conference. Some of the other areas in the country, they'll do a half-a-day seminar. And so this is our third time, and today is our largest turnout. We have a total of 114 people registered.
Each year, Denise and I and several others decide we're going to do it, and we start putting it together, and we get different speakers from Chapel Hill, Charlotte. Chapel Hill's been very helpful this time.
Mom and Dad's cooking for you now, but eventually when you leave the house, it's up to you. And I'm talking about learn to cook, learn to make it yourself, and you can make decisions that are gonna, benefit you. Okay.
To exercise with my mom for 30 days.
Okay, and that's a great part of it.
Maybe for 30 days we just will have I'll have one snack a day instead of two like I normally do because I'm very hungry all the time.
Well, kind of hard because we already eat healthy because my brother's actually gluten-free.
I like that kind of stuff.
Visual representation of where things belong. The pencil's still here, circle's still here.
For someone that is newly diagnosed with Turner syndrome, I would say that you look for all resources that are available to you for support and for family support, and don't let it be. Don't be ashamed of what's happening in your child's life. You need to embrace it and move forward.
I kind of felt upset about it, but then I realized I couldn't change anything, and so I've gotten help to deal with it, and okay with it now.
Experience sort of transitory degrees of anxiety, but providing a rubric or a model, this can be particularly helpful when there's a writing assignment. And I know a lot of schools are leaning towards now with the teachers.
If I have a message out there for parents with a girl with Turner syndrome, don't expect anything differently from her than you would any other daughter. She's going to have her ups and downs, her good days, her bad days, her strengths, her weaknesses, just like every other human being. To the very young girls out there, you'll be okay. To the teenagers and young adults, there's lots of ways of being a mom. To the other women out there with Turner syndrome, take very good care of yourself. Respect yourself. Feel good about yourself. Have confidence in what you know you can accomplish.
The thing that's most important to me is basically just being there for the other girls who aren't as okay with it, and just letting them know that it's going to be okay, and that you are just like anyone else. My mother tells me that I can do everything else other people do. I just have a lot more speed bumps along the way, and it's totally true. And I don't think every Turner's girl knows that, but I think that it's really important for all of them to understand that.
Good morning. Good morning. All right, girls. Good morning.
On your post-it notes, I want you to write 2 truths and a lie.
And we're going to go around this way to this table, and then we're going to go around here just so everyone can hear. So first of all, I go down this table first. I thought it was going to be gross, but I liked it. Or you can say I thought it was going to be cool, or I liked it. Or maybe I didn't know what it was going to taste like, but I was willing to try something new.
I got a less healthy eating bone.
That's fine. Doesn't make a difference. Yeah, you can try.
I'm going to see the same thing as Katie because I really like cake and you're part of the community.
I like chips and stuff as snacks.
What?
I got less healthy, and I would have to say Hershey's and candy.
What is that? What do you have? Is that your suitcase? Where are you going? Yeah? That's a pretty name. One of my teachers never said Yoshino until I you want
I'm so gonna hang this in my room.
What's your favorite song from Teen Beach Movie? I gotta say it's Reason for Bruising. Mine's Can't Stop Singing. Oh, I can't stop singing. So let's just talk.
Like before I was diagnosed, I did cheerleading and I played volleyball and soccer, and after I got diagnosed I kind of sort of stopped, but then after talking to some friends and realizing that shouldn't affect me, I'm getting back into doing volleyball and dance and stuff.
When I meet, especially a mother whose child was newly diagnosed, or even a woman who's pregnant and has just found out that her daughter has Turner syndrome, the thing I really want them to know is that it's going to be okay, that it's, it isn't nearly as scary as it seems when they first get that diagnosis. So I do as much as I can to put mothers at ease, to let them know that this is the face of Turner syndrome.
We're only gonna put in a few, but the difference.
He's a prince.
Happy early birthday.
Hello. Look what I'm eating so far.
So I hope I'm inspiring you